Before marble floors echoed with footsteps and silk curtains hid whispered deals, ancient royal courts were theaters of fear and ambition. Power survived through carefully kept secrets, as torchlight slid across gold and shadow. Rulers learned that appearances preserved loyalty while darkness enforced obedience. These courts were not homes, but machines, designed to watch, test, reward, and destroy. In the silence between ceremonies, betrayals fermented, alliances shifted, and lives ended quietly. Legends were polished for public memory while the truth was buried beneath ritual, law, and spectacle, all meant to convince subjects that order was sacred, eternal, and unquestionable. Ancient legends portray courts as divine centers, yet archaeology reveals corridors built for control. Chambers were aligned to isolate rivals and record every movement. Lost civilizations left behind palaces positioned above rivers and granaries, proving that access to water and food was leverage, not benevolence. Ancient maps freeze these layouts in ink, showing how space itself enforced hierarchy. Forbidden texts speak of oaths sealed by blood, marriages arranged to neutralize threats, and heirs trained to rule without compassion, ensuring that fear flowed through family lines like an inheritance, refined and protected from public scrutiny for generations. Climate change often tightened these secrets. Droughts, floods, and cooling skies threatened legitimacy. The courts responded by hoarding grain, executing dissenters, and staging rituals that promised stability. Archaeology uncovers mass graves beneath ceremonial plazas, evidence of crises managed through terror, not reform. Chronicles praised resilience while erasing suffering, ensuring future generations inherited myths instead of warnings. As palaces migrated with shifting environments, they simply renamed themselves and claimed continuity, masking collapse as transition. Subjects were taught that obedience was protection against nature itself, while fear hardened authority across the centuries. Suppression became official policy inside these royal courts. Archives were sealed, rival chronicles destroyed, and access restricted to those sworn to silence. Even today, political influence shapes excavation permits, museum narratives, and education. Modern technology can scan beneath palaces to reveal prisons, tunnels, and execution yards. Yet this data is often classified or exposing courtly cruelty can destabilize identities still tied to ancient authority. The past remains negotiated, filtered, and soft, allowing descendants of power to inherit symbols without accountability. As we begin this journey, we won't focus on crowns, but on corridors, listening for echoes of decisions that were never recorded. Royal courts mastered the art of hiding violence inside tradition. Secrecy was not a deviation, but the very design, perfected over generations. Join us as we trace how ancient secrets survived collapse, crossed centuries, and shaped systems that still reward silence, preparing the ground for darker revelations waiting just beneath stone, paper, and memory. In the shadowy corridors of ancient power, survival was an art of invisibility. To be seen was to be scrutinized, and scrutiny was often a death sentence. Influence wasn't wielded with a scepter, but with whispers, favors, and calculated absences. Ancient maps reveal how inner districts were walled off, creating a physical distance that mirrored the court's emotional detachment from its people. Forbidden texts, recently deciphered, lay out chilling protocols for surveillance. Servants reported every movement. Scribes tracked shifting loyalties, and silence was rewarded far more than honesty. Archaeologists have even unearthed windowless rooms, not for ceremony, but for interrogation. These royal courts were not just seats of power. They were laboratories of control, perfecting methods to command obedience without ever triggering a rebellion. But what happens when a system built on secrets consumes itself? Lost civilizations offer a stark warning. As climate stress mounted, shrinking harvests and failing trade routes fueled paranoia within elite circles. Competition spiraled into purges disguised as reforms, deep within palace ruins. Archaeology reveals abrupt layers of destruction-burned chambers and hastily sealed corridors. Signs of a violent internal conflict completely erased from the official chronicles. Rulers deflected, blaming external enemies to preserve the illusion of unity, while bards and storytellers reframed the collapse as a heroic last stand. The truth, however, was far more insidious. These courts didn't fall to invaders. They rotted from within, undone by the very secrecy that once protected them. Today, modern technology is peeling back these layers of deception with unsettling clarity. Ground-penetrating radar, chemical analysis, and digital modeling expose forgotten poison labs, execution sites, and hidden passageways. Yet, even now, access to these truths is restricted. Political influence dictates which historical narratives are acceptable. Museums showcase courts as grand cultural achievements, glossing over the systemic cruelty. When a forbidden document surfaces online, institutions rush to contextualize it, cautioning against simple conclusions. Why? Because acknowledging the true extent of this ancient manipulation threatens the narratives of enlightened governance that modern power structures have inherited. This suppression of history was never just a thing of the past. It was a legacy. Successor states adopted the same architecture of control, refining secrecy into bureaucracy, law, and ceremony. Palace designs repeat across empires the same patterns of isolation and surveillance. When climate change forced a court to relocate, it was a chance to reset its reputation, leaving its failures behind as forgotten ruins. Maps were updated to show new, glorious capitals, with no explanation for why the old ones were abandoned. This ensured that while the elite hid their disruptions, the people only experienced continuity. Obedience always felt safer than questioning foundations that were deliberately obscured. The court was not just a place. It was a system portable, adaptable, and terrifyingly resilient. Secrecy wasn't its flaw. It was its most effective strategy. Thanks for watching. Have you ever wondered what secrets lie buried with ancient royal courts? We imagine crumbling palaces and lost treasures, but archaeology is uncovering something far more enduring. Secrecy itself, the methods of control and concealment, didn't die with empires. They migrated, embedding themselves into the very fabric of governance that followed. Ancient maps reveal a startling pattern. Capitals weren't just abandoned. They were relocated with surgical precision. When a site became compromised, the court would move, erasing its past failures while preserving symbolic continuity through ritual. Forbidden texts hint at deliberate resets. Names were changed, histories rewritten, and lineages all of this was done to ensure that subjects saw only stability, while behind the scenes, power quietly reconstituted itself elsewhere. When climate change forced entire populations to move, rulers used the crisis as camouflage. They taught their people that obedience was the price of survival, and in the shadow of necessity and fear, inconvenient truths simply dissolved. Today, modern technology is challenging this ancient inheritance. Satellites can map cities once erased from memory. Databases can piece together fragmented chronicles, and digital archives expose contradictions once dismissed as myth. But the old habits of control persist. Political influence still moderates what is revealed. We are given facts without synthesis, discoveries without a narrative, and access without interpretation. We see the fragments, not the pattern. The new form of suppression isn't censorship, it's information overload. Confusion has become a safer tool than clarity, and the court's final defense is complexity itself, burying accountability beneath so many layers of context that responsibility is softened and reckoning is delayed indefinitely. As our own world faces instability, the parallels become uncomfortably sharp. Ancient courts responded to stress by hoarding resources and managing perception. Today, we see similar instincts justified by security and efficiency. But archaeology reminds us that these very responses often hasten to collapse. Lost civilizations send a clear warning. Secrecy amplifies fragility, yet these forbidden lessons are treated as historical curiosities, not as urgent guidance. Acknowledging them would force us to confront the uncomfortable truth that a system built on concealment cannot adapt when transparency becomes the key to survival. Ultimately, the dark secrets of ancient courts reveal a choice we face in every era. Do we build a future on shared resilience or on managed fear? Archaeology shows us which path endured, not through dominance, but through trust. As we peel back the layers of history, the distance between ancient halls and modern institutions begins to feel unnervingly small. The real question is not whether secrets exist, but who benefits from their persistence. Royal courts were never just relics. They were templates of power, refined by secrecy. As the archives reopen and landscapes reveal what was buried, history is waiting. Will we continue to inherit systems designed to hide their own failures? Or will this exposure finally become our turning point? Because when secrets outlast kings, it is not the courts that endure, but the darkness they taught us all to accept. Thanks for watching.